Hi, this is Eva for Once Upon a Timeline, and today I'm going to discuss brand new changes to the Moai statues of Easter Island. So, the change now are these hats. A lot of people don't remember these hats at all, but now there's a new change, and that's these little top knots to the hats. And in fact, they're not calling these hats anymore. They're saying that they might be representative of some kind of hairstyling. Okay, so originally there were no hats in people's memories, but originally they were just heads. There was no bodies. So the bodies grew, and at first they said the bodies were all hidden underground. But now you can see that they're clearly not. I don't know why anybody would even think they were just heads. There was no reason to suspect that when the bodies were clearly visible. So then people started seeing these hats, and when they started out, they were small little hats. They've gotten larger and larger, and now we have this top knot. The other thing I noticed was that some of the hats are angled in, like this one. Originally, first saw them, they were all straight, like this one here, but a little smaller. Another thing I've noticed is that a lot of them are on a pedestal now, and the pedestal is supposed to be original. There have been some additional changes as well. I've covered a little bit of this yesterday in the stream, but I'm going to cover in more detail with this video. All right, so we also see that some of them are extremely large now, the top knots and the hats or hair or whatever they are now. Also, they have a little indent in them, so they fit onto the head and stay. It used to be flat on top, and they just kind of set on there, but now they stay on a little better because they have this indent and they fit over the head a little bit. Other changes, I'm finding a lot of images with just top with these hat things on the ground all here and there. I did not used to see any images like that. This image shows how they supposedly think that these hats were put on. They're saying that they were rolled down from wherever they were mined, and then they had this ramp, and they would roll them onto the head using ropes, and they're calling this Parbuckling. I've never heard of that word, but there it is. A line would have been wrapped around the puka'au cylinder. The puka'au is their word for the hat. And then people would have pulled the rope from the top of the platform. All right, here's another line of the hats, just the hats. It's weird. I've not seen that before. I'm waiting to figure out why there would be a line of just hats, but I have not seen anything yet. Here are some close-ups of them. A lot of people do not remember this detail here on the body. You see the hand comes around and clutches under the stomach. And there's often like kind of a rectangle down here that's like a belt buckle or something under the belly button region. The head is a lot more defined now. The ears are more defined. And a lot of them have carving on the back now. That's also new. Of course, the whole body is new, so... Okay, here's some interesting things I saw in the wiki. Since the island was largely treeless by the time Europeans first visited, that's a change for me. It was completely treeless when the Europeans first visited, and it was thought that the trees had been completely wiped out. So this doesn't really make sense. Since the island was largely treeless by the time the Europeans first visited, the movement of the statue was a mystery for a long time. But that doesn't make sense, because if it was largely treeless but there were trees, then trees were still on the plate as a possible way of moving. You'd only need a few trees, and there were some trees. So it doesn't make much sense to me. Here's another statement that I found interesting. I have not seen this one yet. At some point after 1722 Roggeveen visit, all of the moai that had been erected on ahus were pedestals, and that's a new one for me. They didn't have pedestals before. All that were erected on ahus were toppled, with the last standing statues reported in 1838 by Abel Albert Depute Thuares, and no upright statues by 1868, apart from the partially buried ones on the outer slopes of Ranu Raraku. Oral histories include one account of a clan pushing down a single moai in the night, but others refer to the earth shaking and other indications that at least some of them fell down through earthquakes. This is a new storyline here, that I guess they were all pushed down and off of their pedestals. Have not heard that. There's only talking about a few being partially buried. This totally flies in the face of anybody thinking that they were just heads. Would be impossible since bodies were clearly visible. Another thing that's interesting is the types of statue. I checked into this about 6 months ago, and there was about 4 or 5 types. Now we see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 types. So almost double. These little tiny guys, they almost look like little babies. And they have legs. This one has legs, so that's a change. The rest of these just have the bodies, but we do have one that has legs. Now, last time I looked, there was only one small one that had legs. This one here, the small one with no legs, was not present. Here you can see the hands swooping around here with the little buckle thing. That thing's just weird. I keep wondering if that's going to change into something. Okay, this shows the scale. One thing I noticed was when I first saw these lined up, they were all the same height. Now you can see there's all these different kinds. Some have the hats, some don't. There's a little bit of variation in the faces now. Another thing that's totally new for me are these wooden statues that were found. And they're kind of, I guess these are supposed to be ribs here. So these things are kind of weird, but apparently that's part of the culture now. Wooden statues. See, some of them they're just kind of, the faces are unpleasant looking. And they're said to be stooped often with ribs showing quite often. Shows a whole bunch of them. Other changes to the island have been covered in the past, but originally for me, the natives had been completely wiped out. They had no writing. There were very few clues as to what their existence was like. It was mostly that way. It's a huge mystery because we didn't know anything about them. There was no writing or anything to determine what had happened. But now the people have never completely died out. They actually still live on the island. Their ancestors do. And although their population was badly thinned, they did not completely die out. They did have a writing system, that we have some knowledge of their language. Things are just really quite different on Easter Island in this timeline. So that's it for today. This is Eva signing off for Once Upon a Timeline.